I appreciate your attendance today. We're going to talk about shoulders of giants. So just to be clear, for any of you that are here this morning, this is not part one of two. We're going to do the exact same thing this afternoon at 1300. And so today, if you're here right now, you don't need to come back again for this afternoon. But I'm glad that you're here. And of course, anybody that wants to join this afternoon and hear the same presentation, we are certainly welcome them to do that. So as we look through me as your new wing commander, I wanted to give you this professional development kind of thing here to show you a number of people throughout my career that have influenced and taught me things. I think we all have things to offer. We all have things to learn from one another. And I hope today you'll get to see the various people throughout my career that have taught me things, to include people in this wing. When we look at how we're going to construct today and make it all work, we are going to go through our three priorities: family, mission, and future. That's right. So we are going to do that in this context. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is family, and we're going to look at some folks that I have learned from in that regard for this priority. Next. So this is my family. On the right, my wife Dorothy of 23 years. In the middle, my three daughters, Ellie, who's the youngest, Molly, who's the middle, and Carly, who is the oldest. So Carly is in college at the Air Force Academy as a cadet there. Molly's a senior in high school, and Ellie is in 8th grade right now. And oh, there's one more person in the picture. Our South Korean foreign exchange student, Nancy, that has lived with us for the past few years. So that's been a great development point for our household as we learn about the South Korean culture and having someone else join us in our home. So I think I've learned a lot from my family as I think about how we have interacted, how we have enjoyed time together, sometimes how we have learned how to not get on each other's nerves, learn how to interact together and dwell successfully. But really, for the four people on the right side, I've learned what selfless service and sacrifice is really all about. You know, I've been down here by myself, as you all have probably realized, and so we made a very tough decision to keep my family, at least for the present time, in Austin. So if you happen to see me here late at night on a weeknight working, it's because my family's in Austin and I can't go home to them because they're far away. But normally, when I work in the same place they are, I get out the door at 5 o'clock like everyone should, and like I expect you all to when you're here during the week. But they have helped me along in my career, taught me a lot of different things, and given me a lot of opportunities to excel. Has anybody else found that to be true about your families? Been enabled and empowered by them? Yeah, it's really great. So I want to just give you a little insight into my family. I want to show you the sweetest and most prized video for my children from our family archives, if I could. Lasts just about a minute. We are, as I'll set up the video, I am filming my young children about 10 years ago, and we are at the creek that is behind the church I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. So let's roll that beautiful bean footage. There we are, the girls playing in the same creek that I did when I was little. Yeah? Huh? I don't know. What is it?
I think it's an ant hole.
An ant hole?
I know whatever it is, okay? I know.
What are you doing over here, Ellie? So no one briefed me there was a hole right there. I left that out before I started filming. Well, it's almost like being on America's Funniest Home Videos. The kids want to watch that video over and over again just to see Dad fall down at the end. But you know, it makes a great point. You know, sometimes when they were especially that age, you may remember, for those that are parents in the room, you kind of get to be the hero a lot of times to your kids. Well, Sometimes they just want to see that Dad's human too, and he falls down sometimes. That's what it means to be part of a family. You know, in my own individual family, I make mistakes. I have times where I'm not my best self, if you will. Times where I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. But you know what it means to be part of a family is you're accepted anyway. They lift you up when you're down. They take care of you when maybe you fall short of the expectations or maybe who you should be. Well, the next slide. I'm grateful to also have this family, you. Great picture from December of 2022. For those that got to be there, this is also my family. So this is a place where it is my hope that we can come and enjoy being a part of a community, being a part of a tribe, being part of a unit that cares for us, that picks us up when we fall down, that takes care of us when we're having a tough time, like my individual physical family has done for me over the years. Next. So, these are my grandparents that have passed away from this world some years ago. Grandma and Grandpa Walters. They have taught me to be an example to your family. You know, they were the matriarch and patriarch of our family. Grandma Walters, I tell you, I was loved a lot by lots of different people as a kid, but I never felt more loved by anybody growing up than I did by her. And her kindness, the way she treated people, was just exceptional, an example to all of us. My Granddaddy Walters, he worked in a manufacturing plant at the Peterbilt plant in Nashville. You know, the trucking company, Peterbilt. And so he worked at Peterbilt up until he was in his 70s. And he didn't do it because he needed the money. He did it because he had a work ethic and enjoyed working. And so he would walk out the door every morning whistling, excited to get to go to work. And then he'd come back home from that tough manufacturing job, working the assembly line, installing dashboards on Peterbilt trucks. And he'd come home and he'd be whistling again. And so he showed me what work ethic was all about. He also showed me that attitude determines altitude. Whatever job he was given, whatever task he had at hand, he did it with the absolute best attitude that he could. It's very instructive to me. So when I show up here to work, hopefully I have a good attitude about being here. Hopefully I follow his example and am excited to be in the premier combat wing in the Combat Air Forces, the premier attack wing that we are. Next. So, spring of 2008, we had a special visitor at our house. This is me, of course, a 5-year-old Carly, and a 3-year-old Molly. And this young lady here is Nicole Malachowski. She was a major at the time, and she was the first female Thunderbird pilot in the U.S. Air Force. So it's funny, she, at the time, there's some notoriety. She had a lot of speaking engagements that she would do around as she worked the Air Force public affairs kind of piece. And when I transitioned to the Pentagon a few years after this, in the office that I worked in, of course, there's pictures all up and down the hall. And they had a big portrait of Nicole Malachowski hanging in her Major Thunderbird uniform, standing there right by the alcove that I went to walk down the hall in. And so there's people like Spatz and Vandenberg and Doolittle, all these great big historical figures. And then there's my friend, Nicole Malachowski, that I got to walk by and say hi to her picture every day. Well, she was in our house, and she really taught me about appreciating differences of others. She taught me that diversity is a strategic imperative for our organization. Because if everybody looked like me, that means probably everybody's thinking like me. Because we tend to have similarities when we have similar backgrounds, but when we have different backgrounds, it actually adds to our combat effectiveness. It adds to our ability to accomplish the mission, because all of you that have different backgrounds than me, different upbringings, different racial backgrounds, different gender backgrounds, you all bring an extra set of diversity of thought and perspective to the table. There's also another thing about this picture I really like, and that's part of the reason why Dorothy and I invited her over for dinner that night when she was visiting Abilene. It's because we wanted our young daughters to see an adult that looked like them succeeding. We wanted to show them that there are no glass ceilings, that the opportunities that exist for her existed for them. As a 1996 Air Force Academy graduate and fighter pilot, she showed them that, hey, there are possibilities that might exist there for later. And so as we get back to our wing, Appreciating Differences, I want all of our airmen to see people like them that are succeeding, see people like them that are in leadership positions, because that is a very, very important perspective for our young airmen to have. Next. Airman Vincent. Everybody met Airman Vincent? Yeah, woo, Airman Vincent. Yeah. So when I showed up here a year and a half ago, I met Airman Vincent, and of course he maybe looks a little younger than he actually is, but I was like, hey man, what do you do on the outside? Because in the Guard, that's a question we always have to ask, because you never know what people are going to say. Sometimes it's a very shocking and surprising answer in a very good way. And so once he started telling me, and these are his schematics of civil engineering diagrams that you can see on the screen there. Once he started telling me, I realized that he basically does what Colonel Campbell does as a civil engineering squadron commander in his civilian job. So we don't ever, especially in the Guard, maybe less so on active duty, but definitely not in the Texas Air National Guard, judge an airman by his rank. Has anybody else found that to be true? Man, so he goes on now, as we brought him on full-time in a civilian capacity, he goes and does a lot of the things that Colonel Campbell does at the colonel level for us during the week. So we never want to judge an airman by his rank, because we want to value what people bring to the table. And sometimes, many times, most of the time, for our guardsmen that show up here on a drill weekend, those incredible DSGs that many of you are, that we have that join us, we want them to know that their civilian experience is highly valued here and can be used to be a force multiplier for us as we move forward in our mission here at the attack wing. All right, next. That's family. Let's talk a little bit about mission. Next. All right, remember these two guys? Probably met them before. So what's interesting about this picture is Colonel Rizzo dropped off EIS patches for us to put on our uniforms, and so we proudly put them on our uniforms, displayed them, and then we got the photo op that is needed. But of course, we're not perfect people, so we kind of jacked up the photo op, because as we were flexing our muscles, I'm covering up his EIS patch. And then as you can see right there, General Camacho, the great General Camacho, is pointing at the EIS patch, but he's not. He's actually pointing at absolutely nothing right here, so we totally jacked up the picture. So there you go, you got it. But what I learned as General Camacho and I got the privilege of working together over the past year and a half is that communication really is everything. And so any day that General Camacho and I were both in the office all day long, we normally spent, between the two of us, or with Shirt Reneker and Chief Maxey, maybe the three of us or the four of us, depending on who was there that day, we spend at least an hour in face-to-face individual conversation every single day. And that's important, because what I found in our organizations is sometimes way up here we set a vision, we give guidance, and then it goes down to the group level, then it goes down to the squadron level, then it goes down to the flight level, then it goes down to the section level, and all of a sudden, somewhere in between, and not because anybody's doing anything nefarious, but just because it's how communication works, the section chief, the section airman didn't get the same message that we sent out up here. Anybody else found that to be true? Yeah, right? So how we fix that and how we try to close that gap is by what the Army often refers to as multi-echelon shared understanding. And what that means is that each echelon of command has a shared perspective and understanding with the next level up and on down. And so by the time you close all those gaps, you get all the way down to where every echelon of command, every level understands and is unified in message and purpose as we move forward as an attack wing. So as we do that, you'll see me try to send out more direct communication to all of our leaders. We're going to make sure that we tighten up those gaps where we can, because if we're not communicating, then we are not succeeding. So one thing I would encourage for all of you where you're at is how often Do you and your deputies, do your section chiefs, to the person above you and the person below you and the person beside you, how often do you actually physically face-to-face communicate? And if it's less than these two guys did, and maybe ask, are you communicating enough? Because we had a lot of other things to do during the day, but we valued that so highly that we were in lockstep, that there was no space between us, that we spent that much time talking about things. And by the way, as we move forward in our wing, we look to the future, know that there literally has been no space and is no space between General Camacho and I. Every decision that he put out as a final decision, this is what we're doing, and he got up and briefed you, we had normally, in almost every case, spent hours talking about those decisions and the direction that we're going to take the wing behind the scenes. So that strategic guidance, that poster that's up, that has family, mission, future, all of those sorts of things, there's no changes to that. And that's intentional because back in August of 2021, when Colonel Camacho at that time put that out, I was a part of all of that development behind the scenes. So I'm excited to say we're going to keep moving forward in the direction that we've been going. Next. So there's individual people that I have learned from, but there's also people from history that I have learned from as well. So I believe that readers are leaders and leaders are readers. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister during World War II, one of our great leaders of the 20th century, really taught me a lot of things when I studied him and what he was all about. A speech he gave in 1941 in the dark days of Great Britain battling the Nazis in World War II. He gave this famous speech where he concludes by saying, never give in, never give in, never, never, never. And so through the years, that's been very instructive to me, that grit, that excitement to never give in. So for me, a little part of my personal story is, these are pilot wings. It took me 3 years to get through a 1-year pilot training course because I'm a slow learner, I guess. I had sinus problems and some back problems in pilot training, so it took me a little longer. And I found instruction from Mr. Churchill here in just moving forward, staying after it, controlling my controllables, and making sure that I did the things within my power to keep moving forward. And then I became medically disqualified from flying, as you may have heard from yesterday. And so after that, tried to never give in and look for ways to get back to the primary AFSC that I was trained in. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to fly the MQ-9 here. I thank you for our ops guys who sit with me and make sure that I don't mess that up when I'm flying in the cockpit, but I really enjoy the privilege and opportunity of participating in our primary mission in the wing. So, learning from history. Shoulders of giants, very important. Next shoulders of giants guy that I stood on here is Major General Skip Scott. He was the 18th Air Force Commander, and I got the privilege of being directed over to him to be his executive officer. And he used to say, hey, we can try to do anything, but there are some things that we shouldn't try to do and other things that we won't. And he said, bring me courses of action that are legal, moral, and ethical, and I'll decide whether or not I'm going to take the risk. So let me define what those mean. So legal means, for me, when I look at decisions that are brought up to the wing commander level, legal means I want to make sure that I know that we're not breaking the law. I mean, we're not committing a crime or going to get thrown in jail. And I also would like to know, if we're going to make a decision, are we breaking any AFIs? Are we breaking any regulations that are out there? It doesn't mean that we may not move forward and try to get a waiver or try to assume the risk, but I want to know that up front. So bring me COAs that have all that outlined. I'll skip over to ethical. Ethical for me means that we have some values that are shared in the United States Air Force. Integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. So ethical means that we bounce our COAs, our decisions, off of those shared values to make sure that we are in line with them. And then finally, moral for me means that although we have a shared set of values as an organization, I have some individual values based on my background and upbringing and my beliefs that are in here. So there's a time or two when I was a squadron commander where a JAG would say, hey, you can do that. And I go, yeah, I got that it's ethical. I could do that. I'm not breaking any laws, but there's something inside of me that doesn't like the way that feels when I'm dealing with this airman. I'm going to go a little bit different direction based on my moral judgment that exists inside me. Legal more than ethical for decision making. So I hope that teaches you when it comes to making decisions as well. Next. So this picture right here is someone that worked for me in the J-8 at state headquarters, an Army captain, Captain Caitlin Rorick. And this is at her promotion ceremony to captain. So she had, like Airman Vincent, she had done a lot of civilian things before she joined the military. But as we're getting promoted here, I was the officiating officer. So in this picture, it was perfect, right? I stick my hand out there to high-five her young son who just pinned on her rank. So the little guy, as my hand is stationary and I'm right here, he like waddles up to me, hits my hand, and then bounces off me and falls down on the ground. and so I had to like stop and go, just to be clear, I didn't knock the little boy down and ruin this picture-perfect moment that we had. So, but Captain Rorick was a fire and forget follower. And what that means is I would give her something, and then once I gave it to her, I wouldn't give a second thought about it because she was that good. She would get it done. She would follow up with me, make sure that we kept moving on. And let me tell you, the leaders that we have in this organization, I have a number of fire and forget followers. And we want to create more and more folks that are assertive followers that we hand stuff to down the chain, and it just gets done, and we don't have to worry a second thing about it. So I'll give an honorable mention here, another CGO, in addition to her, one in our wing, that I've been very impressed with that is a fire and forget follower is Lieutenant Kyle Ames. I appreciate, yeah, let's give him a round of applause because he's sitting right here. Yeah. And you know, Kyle, I mean, we could be in here and I go, Kyle, I need a hole in that wall right there. And he'd be like, he'd walk over and start kicking the wall to get the hole like I want it. That's right. So I appreciate his enthusiasm in carrying out the direction and whatnot. So as we look and try to develop followers, and by the way, I am also a follower because I'm a leader and a follower, as are most of you, which means I have to answer to bosses, and I want to be a fire and forget follower as well. When General Seltzer and General Camacho hand something down here, I want them to go, that's a fire and forget wing right there. I gave it to them. I know they're going to take care of it. Next. So, in my beloved Screaming Eagles in the 40th Airlift Squadron back at Dyess Air Force Base when I was an active duty guy for the first decade and change of my military career, these were my two squadron commanders, one right after another. Anybody know who this guy is? Mike Minahan. He is the AMC commander now, so he was a four-star guy now, but he was my squadron commander, and I got the privilege as being initially medically disqualified. They go, hey, what job should we give Walter? So I'll just make him the squadron executive officer. I'm like, oh, great. So I got to be Minahan's squadron exec as a lieutenant colonel, and so one day I am pinging, because sometimes I can be a little bit of a pinger, you know, so I would, especially as a young captain, I'd roll in there and I'd go, sir, we are about to miss the group's deadlines for this, that, and the other. And so, of course, I'm a little bit flustered because I need him to do some stuff so we can meet this suspense that I think is very important. Well, at that time, we were deploying guys back and forth from Dyess every 120 days. He spent half his time in the desert during his entire command tour in the C-130 world. Well, he looks at me and he goes, hey, TD, that's my call sign, TD. He goes, hey, TD, nobody's getting shot at right now, right? And like in our squadron, no one's under fire. And I'm like, no, sir. He goes, okay, it'll be all right. Get on out of here now. You know, so but he brought the perspective that was very helpful to go. That was his red line. Are we facing any life and death situations right now? That's really what he wanted to know. If the answer was no, then it's going to be all right. And so that was a very, very helpful perspective as I look at the big things that we do. And sometimes our folks facing life and death, that's the true red line. Well, Mike Zick over here, he retired as an 06 some years ago. As I went up to the next level, and I was the base executive officer or whatever, he I put out some guidance to say, hey, we're going to write these decorations, citations. There needs to be this specific verbiage in the decoration citation. And I would, like a dutiful executive officer, if it didn't have it in there, I'd kick it back. And I kicked back a lot of these things. And then finally, he just got aggravated. He's like, oh. So he comes up to me and goes, hey, TD, yeah, we're going to do whatever you want, whatever the boss wants, of course, but could you just show me where the thing you're trying to enforce is written? And I was like, oh, no problem, sir. Let me go get that for you. So he goes back to his office, and then I turn to our secretary, civilian secretary that had been there for a decade. And she's the one that told me, hey, this is the way it has to be. And of course, I'm like, well, I'm not going to mess with the secretary. That's what she says, right? So she pulls out the guidance from like 4 or 5 years ago. It's a memo that after I read it, I realized this expired like 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm basically forcing an entire base worth of people to do something that they don't have to do. And I'm like, oh, curses. Then I go back and I go back, hat in hand. I go back over and I go, sir, you're actually right. Thank you for pointing it out for me, Colonel. I appreciate it. We'll get that corrected. So then I send out the new guidance as the dutiful captain there and say, all right, yes, we've declared victory. Everyone can go vote for Mike Zick for president. So it taught me a very valuable lesson, and that is that sometimes, most all the time, the things that we do here have a very, very good reason for the reason that we are doing them. But that reason may have been for 5 years ago, there was an environmental factor that made us do it that way. Maybe there was a commander in place that insisted that it be that way. Maybe it was the current mission set that we had as the Predator mission. We needed to do it that way. But now, we've been overcome by events and we need to look at it anew and do something different. So I would ask that we go back to our organizations and you go, hey, politely, respectfully, boss, squadron commander, hey, why are we doing it that way? And of course, we have the privilege of being in the Guard, so we have a lot of people that have been around for a long time. And they can probably tell us why we are doing it that way. But maybe we need to look at it anew. Maybe you ask, hey, where is that written, sir? All right, next. Next thing on a mission, this is Tech Sergeant Pell. He is also known as Beaker. That's his call sign. He's one of our awesome sensor operators. And he practices 360-degree leadership. As I've been in the ops group and gotten to watch them work, it's been a great, great privilege and watch them do this combat mission that we have here. And so what happens is there's pilots in the seat, and there's a lot of buttons, and there's software pushes for the things that happen in the cockpit in the airplane with all these screens and all these crazy updates. And so there are some times where we kind of go, we don't exactly know how to do that. And so oftentimes I would, kind of listening around, I would hear a pilot or someone, lieutenant colonel sometimes go, hey, go get Beaker. I bet Beaker will know how to make it work, And so Beaker will run in and go, do-do-do-do. And he'll go, oh, press this button here, press this button there, do that, and it works. And then we're like, oh, thanks, Beaker, it's great. So I've watched Beaker do that with superiors, with his peers, and then mentor and grow the next generation. So I encourage us, all of us, to practice 360-degree leadership, as Beaker has taught me, because that's how we become more effective as an organization. Next. So, calendar versus plush checkbook equals priorities. This is what I learned at the Pentagon. So no one person, it was kind of a group of people that taught me this in my Pentagon assignment before I rolled off active duty down to the state headquarters in Austin. A few different things that happened there during those years. I worked a lot of Pentagon programmer stuff, dealing with money and budgets and all. And so I learned that senior leaders say a lot of stuff. But if I wanted to know what really mattered to them, all I would do is go to the DOD budget, or the Air Force budget, or the National Guard budget, and I would look down the line items and I would see what was funded and what was not, because that's them putting the money where their mouth is. And sometimes the money didn't go where the mouth was. And so, interestingly, a quote I have from General Hoss Cartwright, who was the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when I was there. He used to say, there's 1,000 good ideas out there. The ones without resources are called hallucinations. So as we look as leaders in our organization, what I found is it's not that we don't have money, because the Department of Defense has hundreds of billions of dollars a year to spend. It's that something else was more important. In this wing, if we're gonna do something, then we have to put resources behind it, or else maybe it falls below the line, because we can't do everything because we're in a resource-constrained environment. Next, for calendar, when I want to look at priorities, I was a young major walking down the hall, and in the Pentagon, in that big, huge office building, there's alcoves that you can have like little ceremonies and gatherings in, because there's not big auditoriums throughout the Pentagon. So I was walking down the hall with another major, and we looked over, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, was in the room. He was attending some event. And so I said to my buddy, I said, "Hey man, look, there's Admiral Mullen, and I wonder what he's doing here." And my buddy said, "Well, I don't know, but it must be important." Now, why would he say that? Because the chairman, with his limited 24 hours in a day, was attending some random event with some people there. And so I would say that the chairman is not the only one that has only 24 hours in a day. You do, and I do too. So what am I doing with my 24 hours in a day? Where folks put their time tells me what matters to them, what's important. So as you go back to your units, the thing the Pentagon taught me is this formula: checkbook plus calendar equals priorities. So show me your checkbook, show me your calendar, and I'll tell you what matters to you. And as we go back organizationally, I want you to chew on that a little bit more as we look to get better and look at aligning our priorities, what we say matters to us with our actions. Next. So there we go, Sergeant Sanchez. Yay, Sergeant Sanchez. Yay, all right, good, yeah. So Sergeant Sanchez, another shoulder of giants I get to stand on, taught me to bloom where you are planted. So Sergeant Sanchez, one of our awesome maintenance troops at the time, brought us an idea. Yeah, maintenance. Oh, yeah, good job, maintenance. Yeah, yes, behind for maintenance. Let's do it. Yeah. I was a former maintenance commander. I love maintenance. So for women empowering women, we all have heard and know that she helped facilitate us standing up this council. So I think it's very important as I sit down and talk with folks about their futures. A lot of times what comes up is, hey, what's the next job? Hey, what's going to happen 5 years from now? I want to get a career path and all that sort of thing. And that's very important, and we can have those mentorship discussions. But most of the time what I end up telling them is, hey, just to be clear, what matters is not the next job, not the job after that, or the job 3 jobs from now. Your key to success, the thing that is going to decide what happens to you next, is doing the job you got right now. Why don't you work on doing that job and not worry about the job 3 jobs from now? We want you to bloom where you are planted. And sometimes we get jobs that maybe we don't want. Maybe you get an additional duty that you don't want. I'm just going to say it. For the past decade, almost every job I have gotten, some general just told me, I'm going to do this job next. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to do it. So, I mean, that's the way it's going to work. So as jobs that I wouldn't have necessarily volunteered for, but I appreciated and tried to embrace the opportunity. So for us, for our airmen, for you, to bloom where you are planted is incredibly important. And that not only means trying to make things as good as you can in the job that you have right now, but also looking to make your area better, your wing better. And of course, that's what she did. She bloomed where she was planted. She goes, all right, but I got this thing over here that I think in my current station I can be helpful in. And I appreciate that. We want to look to how we can improve the unit and make things better as well in the stations that we're at. All right, next. So, as we wrap up the mission section, I want you to prepare for the unexpected. So, a lot of times when we have a crisis, folks will say, hey, they rose to the occasion, like they rose to meet the challenge. And I've found that that's really not true, especially in the United States military. Most of the time when we have a crisis, we fall back on our preparation. So in this picture right here, it was Friday at lunchtime. I'm sitting at my desk as the State Director of Public Affairs, having a quiet day, a nice day, a beautiful day in 2018. And then I get one of those phone calls from the TAG's Chief of Staff, go, hey, come over here right now. I'm like, oh man, I was So I hang up the phone. Yes, sir, I'll be over there right now. I'm so excited. Hang up the phone. I'm like, oh man, this is probably going to ruin my whole day, maybe my month, I don't know. And so I get over there, and of course what had happened is, earlier in the week, the President of the United States had said he was sending the National Guard to handle the border crisis. Well then, from Wednesday to Friday morning, nothing happened. And did that make the President of the United States happy, yes or no? No, that'd be a big negative. So, White House people called Pentagon people called the chief of the National Guard Bureau, General Lengyel at the time, and jacked him up. So everybody's getting jacked up, this is the way it works, jack up. So then, Lengyel, he got to turn around and jack up somebody, so he calls the 4 tags of the border states, California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. It says, hey, we gotta get moving on this, and so we got some direction and all that sort of thing. And so, of course, California, New Mexico, and Arizona, it's Friday. By that time, Friday afternoon. Well, they're not going to do anything till the next Monday, which was unacceptable, of course. So we in Texas, we decided, all right, we got 3 hours to go. We're going to go have a press conference, and we're going to brief this stuff and make sure that on national television people see that we're launching these helicopters going down the border, all that sort of thing. So I was planning on having a date night with Dorothy and the kids, and we're going to take the kids with us, have a nice dinner. It's going to be quiet. Of course, that's not how my day ended up going. And so then I found myself on national television talking with General Norris, because General Nichols, the tag at the time, was out of the country. So General Norris and I are up there briefing, taking questions, and then the next morning I'm on Fox National News talking about some stuff. So that was not how I planned my weekend to go, but it's indeed how it went. So I want you and for us to prepare for the unexpected, because we never know when some crisis is going to come up, when we have some unexpected thing that we need to pay attention to. So when we talk about being green and staying green, being ready to deploy, being ready for whatever the next thing is, and as we message that, that's why it's so critically important, because we never know when we're going to be asked to do something significant. Next, let's talk about future. We'll wrap it up there. Next. All right. So, close mentor of mine of a number of years, Major General retired Dawn Farrell. We got the opportunity to hear her speak yesterday at the Women Empowering Women Council. And so this is a helicopter ride that we're taking down to Ellington, actually, from Austin, right before she retired. And Sergeant First Class, Army Sergeant First Class DeBars is sitting there in the back and in our helicopter as we're flying down here for her to visit this great wing. Well, she started out as an Airman Basic, made it all the way up to 2 stars, and she was the first female general officer in the Texas Air National Guard. So the message that she conveyed to me, and she conveyed to many others around, was that you, me, have unlimited potential. And General Farrell is a great example of showing us that. So I want our airmen to know that they have unlimited potential. They have lots of different opportunities to succeed here in ways that maybe they didn't even think possible. So thanks to General Farrell for teaching me that. In fact, I'm just going to go and say, she was fussing at me yesterday. She was at the change of command ceremony. She's like, Travis, you're a wing commander now. Go let the staff people do staff stuff. And so she's always teaching me, right? She's going, don't run around trying to do a bunch of stuff, So it was funny. There's always that mentorship stuff going on, and as she teaches and shows us great examples of how to be a great leader. Next. All right. So this is Cadet Walters at the United States Air Force Academy. This is Cadet Matt French, who eventually became a wing commander over in Florida. And this is, at the time, Brigadier General Steve Lorenz. He's the Commandant of Cadets at the Air Force Academy. So he eventually became a 4-star and the ATC commander. But we were seniors getting ready to graduate. And what had happened is he came in and he started putting new rules in place that we didn't like very much. One of the rules he put in place was that we could not have live plants in our room. Of course, that supremely irritated me, so I decided in our going away that I would give him the plant that I was planning to put in my room but couldn't. I'm like, here, sir, why don't you water this? Because, you didn't allow me to have it in my room, so there you go. Just one little last dig before you walk out the door, General. And when you're a cadet, you can get away with that stuff. Then you put on the officer rank, and then that's no longer acceptable, right? So, but he taught me a very valuable lesson, because he was not there to make friends. He was not there to make us happy and do everything we wanted. He was there to lead. And as I watched him and as I have gone up through the ranks, I realized that leadership is a very lonely place. And so for many of you, you're in maybe a little bit of a lonely place, and it just keeps getting lonelier, meaning that we're not here to win popularity contests. We're not here to grant everybody exactly what they want. We're here to do the mission. We're here to support the state, to support the nation, and sometimes that means making hard decisions. Sometimes that means that there may be some unpopular things that I have to make decisions on. But as you all rise up through the ranks and continue to move forward, I want you to know this and embrace it, that really leadership is sometimes a lonely place because we have to just stand up for what's right and do what's needed. Next. All right. Mentorship matters. So we got some of our all-stars here. Yeah, a round of applause for Reneker, Harper, Alisea there. Last year we sent them to a leadership development symposium. Of course, Sheriff Reneker, you know, is our wing first sergeant. Sergeant Harper is our state award-winning NCO of the Year. Woo-hoo! And talking to Alisea some months ago after she got back from that symposium, she showed me that mentorship really, really does matter. Because we sent her, and all three of them, to learn a bunch of stuff. And then she got to excitedly tell me about how she brought it back to her unit in the Civil Engineering Squadron and got to mentor and teach the things that she had learned to her section to continue to develop the junior ranking airmen that she gets the privilege of leading and interfacing with and facilitating their growth. So that's a very, very instructive model because for us, as we look about mentoring, it's a continuous process. There's always new folks that are joining our ranks that need to learn from the things that we know from those of us that are more experienced in uniform. It's a continuous cycle. It never stops. Next. All right. Sergeant Ford, yes. Give a hand for Sergeant Ford. Yeah, all right. Sergeant Ford, in our wing safety office, we have Sergeant McDaniel and Sergeant Diaz that normally sit in the front office, and sometimes they're on TDYs or on leave or other places. And so on very rare occasions, very seldomly, but on very rare occasions, we have Sergeant Ford come down when others are not available and sit in the front office to just cover the phones. And so we can make sure that we are responsive to higher headquarters. Well, I leave and he's sitting there at the desk. I go to a meeting. I come back an hour later, and dude has a little cleaning mechanism up there, and there's these vents that sit in the wing command street right in the middle. And they're like a checkerboard where they got little individual holes all the way through it, and he's individually cleaning out each hole. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, well, sir, I was sitting here at my desk and I was typing, doing some work, and then I looked up and I saw the vents were very dirty. And actually from down here at this perspective, you can really see how dirty they are. And I was like, okay, all right. And so I decided that they just need to be clean, so I'm just going to take care of it. I said, all right. And I thought about how many times I'd walked past those silly vents and hadn't thought that they needed to be cleaned. But he was unwilling to leave it for his replacement, to leave it for the next person that was going to sit in that seat, even though he just sat there for just a few minutes. So as we stand on the shoulders of giants today, as I do, Sergeant Ford taught me to not leave it for your replacement. So what that means is, for not leaving it for your replacement, it means to make sure that we don't walk past stuff that needs to be done. For all of us in our wing, that we look for things that need to be improved. Who's the person that maybe needs a little bit of extra encouragement in your unit? Who's the person that maybe needs to have a tough conversation to make sure that they get back on track? How much stuff maybe needs to be shredded in your unit that hasn't been shredded or turned into DRMO? One of the things that we're going to do is have a family day in April. Very excited about that. We haven't had a family day here in some years, pre-COVID. So, of course, all your families are invited for the Sunday afternoon of April drill, and Sergeant Keys and team are planning a big event. The week before that, we're going to take some time to do squadron beautification. The squadron commander kind of led, but look around and look at what needs to be maybe given a little attention to. And bear in mind that we're not going to do that for an inspection, because we already had our inspection. We've got a couple years till we have our next one. But we will do it for our most honored guest, our family. So when your family's here, I want this base to be something, a pride, as you show your families where you work and they get to visit. So that's a day where we get the opportunity to look around and go, all right, what are we not going to leave for our replacements a year from now or 2 years from now? What kind of processes do we need to improve that you can just go ahead and knock it out and take care of it and make things better to improve the unit? That is not leaving it for your replacement. All right, next. So, final slide here. Some of you have seen this before. I've used it before. This is my daughter, Carly, my oldest daughter. And in 2006, I came home and little girl Carly had gotten into my closet. Maybe you all have experienced that with your own kiddos before, for those that have kids. She got my flight gloves, she got my ascot, she got my hat, and she put it all on, and she was so excited to wear them. Of course, I never wanted or was focused on my daughter going to the military. I didn't like have her out doing jumping jacks and push-ups when she was at this age, you know. But exposed her to things so she could make her own choices. And evidently she was watching. She was looking, she was learning, she was listening. And 15 years later, in 2021, here's a picture of her in the cadet field house at the Air Force Academy wearing a uniform. I want you to know that when it comes to our future, that, you know, MQ-9, that's a platform we fly right now, I think it will be here for a very long time. I know there's been some things the Air Force has said about maybe, you know, it going away eventually, but I think we're going to have this mission set and have this platform for quite a while. I hope that as an additive mission that we get a U.S. Space Force name tag somewhere at Ellington. We have such a nexus with Johnson Space Center, lots of opportunities there. I hope that happens too. But you know what? Air power for the next 100 years has nothing to do with what airplane sits on the ramp. You know what I'm saying? Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with our mission set. Nothing to do with if we're able to bring space folks here or not. It doesn't matter. Air power, in whatever form we get it, for the next 100 years, has everything to do with growing the next generation of airmen. For all of you in the room who have been here for a while, some of you who are brand new, we have to continue to mentor and grow the next generation of leaders so that we continue to have the long blue line of United States Air Force and Texas Air National Guard air power that continues to be able to very capably do whatever their state and nation asked when it's the 147th Attack Wing, or maybe 20, 30 years from now when it's another name. The long blue line continues, and that is the key to the next 100 years of air power here at Ellington. So I'll wrap up today by asking you this question. We talked about being on the shoulders of giants, standing on the shoulders of those people who have supported us, who have lifted us up, who have taught us things, whether it be superiors, peers, or subordinates. Who have you stood on their shoulders? Who have you gotten mentorship from? Has it been people in this wing? Well, maybe today, if they're still here, go up quietly and just tell them thank you. Thank you for investing in you as an airman. Thank you for making a difference in your life. I hope today, even though this is certainly not all the people in the wing who have influenced me, you see just a few of people who have taught me things, taught me great lessons, and made me a better leader. So I really appreciate your time and your attention today.